It's another wonderful day in Manatee County. I'd like to call to order the budget meeting we're having today. And as we do with every meeting here in Manatee County, we always start with a invocation, praying to our God, and to our pledging to our great nation. So I'd like to call up for the invocation is Missy Parmenter from the Community Impact. She's a Community Impact pastor at Oasis Church. So everyone can please rise.
Lord, we thank you for this beautiful morning. We thank you for the opportunity to work together in unity and to seek your truth. Lord, I pray that your presence is here in this room and that we're able to speak and think clearly, that your will is done, and that we have an effective and we have a powerful meeting together this morning. In Jesus' name we pray, amen.
Thank you. I'd like to call up our Chief of Staff and Navy Captain Andy Butterfield to do the pledge this morning.
Morning, sir. My honor.
Thank you, sir.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Pastor. Thank you, Captain Butterfield. All right, so what we're going to do this morning is I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to our Chief of Staff, Sheila McLean. And, ma'am?
CFO.
Oh, sorry, CFO.
I moved
Sorry,
up.
I was still thinking about the Top Gun guy. You know, our CFO, excuse me, Madam CFO, will give our presentation this morning on the budget update.
Good morning, Commissioners, County Administrator, Mr. Bishop, County Attorney, Ms. D'Agostino. Today, we are presenting the budget update for the proposed version of the budget fiscal year 25. To give you a little bit of a recap, back on June, we have the work sessions for the presentation of the recommended budget. At that point, we were working towards our way of the July 1st certification. Excuse me. To be provided that at the moment, it would begin our trim process that we have to now methodically follow through. Any changes that happen in this recommended budget that we presented in June had to come back to you as a budget update. That is today's meeting. As topics of discussion today, we would be talking, back on June 17, we had all the most of the constitutional officers come and present their budget with the exception of the sheriff and the supervisor of elections and the property appraiser. Unfortunately, we don't have the property appraiser here today as he's under the weather. We do have the sheriff, Mr. Rick Wells, and our supervisor of elections, Mr. James Thatcher, to present their budget. So without further ado, I will move on to other topics after they are done with the budget. So for the essence of their time, let's start with the sheriffs. Mr. Rick Wells.
Madam CFO.
Yes.
Madam CFO, the only items that we will be voting on today are the millage and bringing back into the budget the county attorney's updated budget, correct?
Yes, sir, because
Thank
the constitutionals are presenting their budget for the first time. You have to have time to vet on it and all that, so you can come back and make any, through September until we present our present board public hearings, you have the right and choose to make any changes to the budget at that point.
All right, thank you, Madam
Okay.
CFO.
Yes.
Morning, Sheriff. How are you this
Hey, good
morning?
morning. Thank you, Sheila. Hey, good morning, Commissioners. Appreciate the opportunity, as always, to be here in front of you to discuss the needs of the Manatee County Sheriff's Office and what we hope to do here in the near future. And during the last 8 years, as I've been sheriff of Manatee County, I have really tried to be as conservative as I possibly can when I come before you and as we talk about the budget and the requests that I have made. Unfortunately, that really has not done enough for our ability to keep up with the growth of Manatee County and to continue to fulfill our obligation to the citizens of Manatee County. For example, during the last 10 years, The population growth of Banty County has grown by 29%. The sheriff's office has only grown by 12%. The sheriff's office was during, prior to the 10 years, 20% of the county's overall budget. It is now currently sitting at 16%. In 2015, we needed 165 deputies to reach the FBI's rate of 2.6 per 1,000 population. We currently are well below that and need 364 more deputies to meet that national average. So I come to you trying to not only fulfill the needs that we currently have, but to hopefully forecast the needs for later as our community continues to grow and we continue to deal with the crimes associated with growth like everyone else. We serve a population of about 459,000, according to the county's numbers. In comparison, if you look at the numbers for the National Sheriff Association, we are only about 50,000 less than what you would consider a major city for the National Sheriff Association. That's how much we have grown over the last 10 years, and that's just what we're dealing with now, and that puts me at a different level when it comes to the national landscape. So we're asking for, first of all, 15 positions just for the law enforcement side, road deputies, to continue to meet that demand. We also are going to have to continue to grow the FTO program. We're going to need to add supervisors to that program. Understand this, we handle well over 300,000 calls for service every year, an average of 900 plus calls per day. When I was elected sheriff in 2017, our detectives handled a little over 5,000 cases per year. That number has grown to well over 8,000 cases a year. So we need to increase our detective division as well. We have maintained 14 detectives in that unit, and it's time to get aggressive and to handle that caseload that they now have. Obviously, we have salaries in there, the salary increase to keep up with our competitors, the law enforcement agencies that we compete against in this Tampa Bay area. Everyone is trying to raise that salary and to fight that inflation that we now have to deal with, and also with our civilian staff. We need to give them a pay increase that matches that inflation and gives them an opportunity to hopefully go out and buy a house and to live the way that we need them to live here in Manatee County, because we want to keep them here in Manatee County. We have the new Omega building that we're going to be opening up to release some of the population issues that we have in the jail. Going back to 2017, our average inmate count was about 930 to 940. That now has risen to well over 1,143 to 1,180. There's a couple reasons for that. It's population, obviously, but it's also the new bond schedule that was put in place by the state that started in January. That's going to keep criminals in the jail longer as they go through the process. So the new Omega building will help us relieve some of that stress that we're feeling inside the jail, and also continue to give us the opportunity to run the programs that are so important to us as the recovery pods. The recovery pods have been very successful, and we need them to continue as those men and women deal with the addiction issue that we struggle with here nationwide. Excuse me. So we need that Omega building. Well, when you open up a new unit at a corrections facility, you need a manpower. So we're going to have 15 correction deputies to maintain that building. We're going to need also sergeants and control room operators and the personnel to safely perform those duties each and every day inside that new. And I don't know how far back some of you go, but that used to be the old boot camp back in the day. When we had the boot camp program for the juveniles, that was a major program for several sheriff's offices throughout the state. So that will now just become a new housing building for whatever we choose, most likely our juvenile population, and hopefully further programs. Any questions at this point?
Hey, Sheriff, what's the total capacity at the jail? I mean, you're at well over another.
It's roughly 1,800.
Okay.
So, we have a long way to go, but you have to also remember there's certain populations that we have to, at times, maybe put 5 or 6 together. We can't mix juveniles at all. Women have to have their own unit. So, 1,800 beds doesn't always calculate, proper math the way we would want it to. So that new Omega building will give us that opportunity to kind of spread that out.
All right. Thank you.
We are asking once again to increase the detective division. We also want to add 2 crime analysts to the mix. We have some of the best crime analysts in the state of Florida, and I say that with 100% confidence. They perform a phenomenal job of helping us find those that are wanted for crimes in Manatee County, and also to help us fight crime trends that we're dealing with. And it's been long overdue for us to increase that unit with the population that we're dealing with. We still wait for vehicles to come in. We have over $1 million outstanding right now that we're waiting for. We have roughly 20 vehicles that we're still trying to get in from the state bid, and hopefully that will occur sometime here in the very near future. And I continue to take on responsibilities that you asked me to take on. I was asked here recently to take on the new homeless outreach program. I will gladly do that, like Sheriff Galtieri does in Pinellas County. I think that's a good thing for us as soon as we find that location. But we need that personnel to properly manage and maintain that facility, and to actually help and assist these men and women that need help. And if we're going to do it, I want to do it right. So I gladly take on that responsibility. I gladly take on responsibility of the new canine, the kennels, to relieve some of the pressure that we have in animal services. But I think that'll be a good therapeutic program for some of the inmates as well that want to be out there and to walk those dogs. So that's something I'm glad to do, but that still takes personnel to manage and maintain that. So that's pretty much where we're at right now. As you can see, when it comes to just the core, the capital issues that we have, the jail contract, the food, the gas, everything is up. We continue to maintain a very large fleet of vehicles because of the increase in population and the increase in our staff. So, we're trying to get to a point that we should already be, and then also to look at the future needs of the Manatee County Sheriff's Office and the citizens that we serve. So I'll open it up for any questions that you have.
Commissioner Ballard's on board.
So, Sheriff, first I just want to thank you for for being forward-thinking and for leaning into these new responsibilities that we ask you to take on, and being creative and kind of on the cutting edge. But I did have a question about detectives. So, you said we've gone from our detectives handling 5,000 cases to 8,000 cases. What is considered a case? Are all of those like full-fledged, intensive investigations, or are some of them kind of open and shut pretty quick?
It's a mixture of
Sure.
your property crimes and your person crimes, right? So
Okay.
crimes against people. So if you think about one of the major issues that we deal with in Manatee County, like other agencies throughout the state of Florida, it's vehicle burglaries, right? So we may have, at times, 4, 5, 6 vehicles, 10, 20, that are broken into in a night. So, the road deputies and our crime scene, they will go out, they dust for prints, they will hopefully gather some evidence of who may be responsible, and then the detectives, that's their job to take that information and to try to locate the suspect. So it could be an open shut case, it could take weeks, it could take months, it could take years, it all depends.
That is a very good point, and as a victim of a car burglary, your office actually did, over a couple of weeks, track down the person who stole my car. So that was fantastic. So how many new detectives total are we looking at?
So we're looking at a total of 2 detectives, one for property and one for persons, right? I'm sorry, two property crime detectives. We're looking for the crime analysis, which is in there. One NIBIN detective, which is basically forensics on bullets, right?
Okay.
So and we have, over the last 5 or 6 years, we've been able to form our own NIBRS unit so we can conduct our own analysis on ballistics and get that information back a lot quicker than having to send that off to the FBI or to FDLE. So, and also want to add in there that, you know, we have to add a deputy for the new school cameras, right, the speed cameras. We have to add 2 more deputies for SROs for our county schools, and we also have to add another deputy for the tax collector's office who has, you know, deputies that secure that property as well.
Okay, thank you. That's all I've got for now.
Thank you. Commissioner Cruz.
Yeah, this is less for the sheriff. It's more for the public, because you see a big number up here, but this is critically important to Manatee County. And we're not asking a whole lot of questions on a very big budget, but we do a very deep dive on this budget. Like, sometimes people just present us with some numbers with no backup support and say, here, give me some money. The sheriff, year after year, brings us out to the jail. I've done, I think, 3 different briefings on this. Excuse me. 3 different briefings on this. We don't just get asked for money for the medical wing. We tour the medical wing. We meet with Colonel Casella and Major Porter and the sheriff to understand this. So we're not asking a whole lot of questions on a very large line item because we've received the information. We understand what the request is and why the request is. And, you know, the board supports the sheriff. The board supports law enforcement, first responders here. And they don't just take it lightly. We don't just get a budget saying, give me $200+ million. They diligently explain it to all of us as a board. So I appreciate every year how you present this board to us in a way that we can understand so we can continue supporting you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you, sir. Morning, Sheriff.
Good morning, sir.
The deputies are boots on the ground. We're going to give them, of course, they need a pay raise. Do you think 76 is enough to keep them in Manatee County, or are they still going to get poached?
I believe that's going to do what we need to keep them here and be competitive with the other agencies around us. I mean, Sarasota really is my biggest competitor, and Sheriff Hoffman has been very aggressive with making sure that the pay scale has been I think he's number 1 in the state. But, you know, I give him credit for understanding the issue at hand, where we're all competing, and we're competing because our standards are high.
Yeah.
You know, and we're not just going to hire any cadet out of the academy. You have to have the qualifications necessary to be a deputy at the Manatee County Sheriff's Office.
Once a law enforcement officer comes out of the academy, how much are you spending on them in their training in the first couple of years
Altogether, it's over $200,000.
for one deputy?
Yes, we want to keep them here, right? We want to make sure we don't want to be the training ground where we train them and then someone else gets the luxury of everything that we did.
Yeah, we want to stop that.
Yeah, and we are, and I do want to say that all of you have done a great job of helping me keep my personnel in Manatee County. You continue to do that year after year, and you know, unfortunately, we're just dealing with a climate where everyone wants to make sure that the personnel that they train, they put all of that effort into, stay at their particular agency, and we want to do the same.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions of the sheriff? Thank you, sir.
Thank you all.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you for what you guys do every day. Thank you.
Okay,
Madam CFO.
Following, we have the Supervisor of Elections, Mr. James Satcher.
Well, someone better looking is coming up, so. And much shorter.
Good morning, Chairman, Vice Chairwoman, County Attorney, Administrator. Thank you, Sheila. My name is David Ballard, and on behalf of James Satcher, I'm here today to present the fiscal year 2025 budget for the Supervisor of Elections. First of all, I'd like to also thank Sheriff Wells for keeping us safe. Like law enforcement, election security and integrity are worth investing in. So today, I bring you a budget that totals $4,019,615. This budget reflects identical levels of service as the amended 2024 budget. And although fiscal year 24 included the presidential preference primary and primary, the next fiscal year 25 includes the general election. Personnel services total $2,547,000, which represents an increase of $256,000. This increase is primarily the result of adopting the county's commitment to recruitment, retention, and succession planning. Of the increase, $79,000 will be used to maintain staffing levels consistent with the amended fiscal year 24 budget. Operating expenses will total $1.47 million, a decrease of $259,000. This decrease is a result of a singular investment in election security in fiscal year 24 and updating the funding objects to reflect actual and actuarial costs. All other services remain consistent. So to give you an update on where we stand in the primary election, currently approximately 20,000 ballots have been returned to the Supervisor of Elections. We will start canvassing on August 6th. That is when we will have our LNA, logic and accuracy testing, and then the following day we will start opening and tabulating those ballots. So I open to any questions that I may be able to answer.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Commissioner Cruz.
And this is just because I don't 100% understand everything about your office. Next year, we do have the general election, right, in this year. But during the course of this fiscal year, we have the election in November. But postage from fiscal year 2024 is lower than the postage anticipated. We're just carrying the amended 2024 $355,000 to fiscal year 2025. Is there not cyclical expenses for on year and off year where there's certain years where we don't have to send out voter cards to everybody or send out mail-in ballots to everybody? Wouldn't we expect to see lower expenses in these off years?
Absolutely. In a presidential year, the general election is election Super Bowl. So we've maintained that level of funding to make sure that we are able to take care of anyone that chooses to vote by mail, early, or in person on election day. Early voting and in person, they don't take up any postage or printing costs, but we want to maintain those same levels just to be safe so that we guarantee that those ballots are sent out. If everyone needs to have if they start coming back, that there need to be affidavits, the signatures aren't right, we just can't afford as a nation to have any problems come up in the general election.
Okay. My only other thing, and this is more presentation, so take it for what it is. I think this could have been presented better to the public. Because here's the thing, this board already approved the increase in budget. I'm not going to fight you on the past increase. I voted no for it, but I'm not going to fight you on it. I don't override rules of board. So I'm basing this on the current fiscal year budget. But we're implying that it's a budget decrease. It's not really a budget decrease, right? Because $223,000 of that was a non-recurring expense for machinery. So if I just take your numbers and modify them accordingly, the actual amended budget for fiscal year 2024 is more like 3.8, not $4 million, because you shouldn't expect the non-recurring expense again. So it actually results in an increased budget of $220,000. But to be fair, this is why I'm not fighting on it. That's only a 6% increase, which is actually lower than the increase requested for the appraiser. So it is what it is. I didn't like the last budget increase, but that's in the past. I don't have a problem with a 6% increase year over year. I'm just saying from a presentation standpoint, it would have been nice to reflect actual numbers, but that's possibly how we structured it.
Well, certainly. So that amount would have maintained in the budget, and we could have started investing in upgrading our DS200s, our DS850s into the newest election hardware. However, we did decide that at this time that wouldn't be the best use of public dollars. So at that time, we can have the conversation with the Board of County Commissioners about making that investment in the election. So although I appreciate and understand what you're saying, that money was in the budget and we elected to remove it.
Understood. I'm just saying, operating expenses are up 6%. Overall budget's down 0.06. Right? I mean.
That's correct. Yes, sir.
Okay, I just want to make, like I said, that's for optics. 6% is not a big number. I mean, the 6% doesn't faze me. I'm okay with what you're requesting because we've reset the bar for your office. I just, that was more just for my sake and for sake of the public and for sake of future presentation. It's nice to see actual, especially when the actual is unreasonably higher than previous. So that's it. That was more of a my thing.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
All right, any other questions of Chief of Staff for the SOE? All right, thank you, sir.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sheila.
Okay, since the property appraiser couldn't be present today, I will present their budget. Their budget is a little bit a little bit different than the ones that presented before, only because they are based on state budget and county contribution of their budget. So like I said, their total contribution for their budget is 94.08%, and the county's contribution is the $7.7 million. Everything else besides that is either paid by the municipalities and other agencies. The increase that the county is facing also is the 1% of health insurance, the cost of living at 7%, and FRS retirement adjustments, which happened every year. We also, by statute, are supposed to be giving them that those changes as well as they were approved by the board for the BOCC. With that said, do you have any questions for the property appraiser's budget?
Any questions from the board? Thank you.
All right, so at this
Fill in property
point,
appraiser.
we move to the other topics of discussions, a little bit more meatier. So we go back, on July 1st, the property appraiser came back with the certification of assessed values. So today, I have to come and show you the impacts of that July 1st certification. Some of those changes have other repercussions and impacts, so I have to, by statute, supposed to come back and explain to you. There were quite a few. So in the exhibits that I presented in the agenda, Exhibit A and Exhibit B, I broke them down by revenues and expenditures, so you can refer to those in detail. I categorized them, so I will be talking to them in categories, but it does affect a lot of funding sources throughout the budget, okay, and multiple departments. The other thing that we will be discussing is the CIP, the pulled items. Back in June, you pulled some items. We will be discussing and how we brought those into the budget. The county attorney's budget, I was given the motion to come back and discuss the changes for the Ms. D'Agostino to explain the items that she would like to bring forward into her budget as additions. And finally, the CIP changes. Back on the June 18th CIP meeting, there was some discussion about adjusting the capital improvement plan, making some deferred projects and so forth. So today I come back to you with that resolution. We'll be talking about the impact on the millage, and of course, the most important aspect of today's meeting is just voting on the adopting the tentative millage in the proposed budget. And then we'll be talking about budget changes and what's remaining for the cycle of the fiscal year 25. So let's talk about the budget reconciliation. What has changed in the budget? in the proposed budget, now that we have gotten into it, the total net budget for the county is $1.3 billion, and the total gross budget is $2.4 billion. The capital improvement plan is $2.2 billion as well. This one is only for the fiscal year 25 through 29 plan only. The investment for the fiscal year 25 CIP is $503 million, and that is the amount that we are adopting this year. Everything else after that is just a plan. With a total of 725 projects, and 63 of them are new. Going back a little bit and differential to last year, the difference from last year, we had from the recommended, sorry, we had 738 projects. It went down to 725 as part of the deferred of the projects. From 59, we had an increase of new projects coming in at 63, only because fiscal year 24 has brought new projects into the CIP plan that we had to adjust accordingly. Those were adjusted and approved by the board, so we have to make sure that those were included and complemented with what we presented in the recommended. 39% of the total net budget is the CIP. So let's talk about the changes that happened for the budget, for the fiscal year 25 budget. $42 million was increased in the gross budget. The main ones, of course, were the July 1st certification, the pulled items. We'll discuss those individually, but the total increase is $42.5 million. And into the net budget, because there are items that came of there that do not affect the net budget, it's a $38.5 million of adjustments. So let's talk about the July 1st certification changes and how it changed our property taxes. Back in the recommended, we brought forward an estimated increase in property taxes of 10%. The property appraiser came back and they said, no, for the countywide operating millage is 13.45%, an adjustment to our budget from the 10 to the 13.45 of 3.45%. The unincorporated MSTU went to 14.34%, which was an adjustment to the budget of 4.34%. And then the Palmer went down from the July at 8%, so we had to decrease it by the 2%. How does that translate into dollars? A total increase into the ad valorem taxes of $13.8 million that was brought into the proposed budget. So this July 1st certification has brought other repercussions to the budget. It relates to every time we change the property taxes, there's an impact that we have to adjust. One, because the CRAs are adjusted, the community redevelopment agencies are a result of the changes in the property taxes and assessed values. We have to adjust that as well. So we have to pay those out to the municipalities. So we also had to restate beginning balances. As fiscal year 24 fiscal year is still moving, the target of our cash flow changes. So we have to readjust every version of the budget. We have to realign the new cash flows to make sure that our budget is still in accordance and totally transparent into the new fiscal year. Of course, with adjusting cash flow, we have to adjust the calculations of the interest income. And when the sheriff brought their budget, there was also some revenue that he brings with him, like the Anna Maria, the SROs. We had to adjust those as well. So in here, like I said, I categorized them, but if you want to see the full detail of them in the agenda, I have Exhibit A, where it talks individually, one by one, of what those dollar impacts were. When we talk about the expenses, that is inclusive of COP adjustments. As you can see, 39 point, almost $40 million. The sheriff's budget was brought in. As we impacted the CIP, transfers between funding sources to make those changes to the CIP also had a repercussion to it. So as we are detailing those in our Exhibit B, but here is, again, is categorized. We made department adjustments. This one was just more like an allocation of our indirect cost plan. Our consultant brought forward the final results, so we had to adjust those as well throughout all the departments. Supervisor of elections, we brought in a new bank loan in the last board meetings, and we had to bring this forward so that we can, for continuation of the debt service payments that are happening on the new fiscal year. So as you can see, then of course, we had to bring in the pulled items, changes to the salary adjustments. So we had 39 positions that were funded by ARP for the paramedics, BLS and ALS. Those had to be brought into the FY25 budget because, as we know, ARP is finalizing into the last of the project. So the funding for those staffs has already been consumed on the ARP. So we had to bring it back into the ARP, so now into the general fund. So now we have to make sure that we have the appropriate reservation for salaries for those staffs. We changed that reserve. The tax collector's budget, we had to adjust as a result of the July 1st certification. There's a calculation and a formula that comes into it that it's based on collections of and the percentage of the ad valorem. Property appraiser brought their changes to the budget. And of course, we had, like I said, we had to adjust the CRAs for those changes. We had to change, we restated the generational impacts, happily to say that we keep moving those dollars to the projects so that they can keep motion and so forth. So we had to adjust that reserve as monies keep moving out of there into but of course, there's going to be some money that's going to move into the new year. So I had to adjust those to factor in those changes. Changes to the reserve and the capital reserves as we are changing projects and as we are changing other type of expenditures, so are the reserves are being affected. For a total, what I'm showing is reserves and expenses were balanced changes, so that gave birth to the new budget that I just presented. Talking about the pooled items. So these are the items that the board asked us to bring forward on this meeting from June's meetings. It was the court administration to do some remodel for the courtrooms at $210,000 non-recurring. The assistant county attorney and the state attorney and the legal assistant for the state attorney for the BOP program. And then the 2 telecommunicators for public safety. Those were brought into the budget for a total of $617,000. Now I would like to talk about the pulled item, and the motion that was given to me in the order was for the county attorney to come back and explain and provide a detail of all the needs that she has so that the board could give direction to financial management to put those in the budget. So with that, I would like Ms. DiAgostino to talk in regards to her budget a little bit.
Thank you very much, Madam CFO. Good morning, Mr. Chair, Commissioners, Mr. Administrator, and of course, Madam CFO. If you recall, when we last discussed the budget for the County Attorney's Office on June 12th, I had been on the job for 39 days. And at that meeting, the board made it clear that I had your support to add more staff to the team if that's what was needed to get the office performing at the level that this board wants, and that was a priority of the board. And I was encouraged by one commissioner's words to shoot for the moon. So on July 14th, only 2 days later, I submitted my proposed business case for additional personnel to Madam CFO and her team. But fast forward to now, and as of today, I've now been in this position for 90 days. And as compared to what I knew on June 14th, I now have the benefit of 47 additional days of knowledge. In those days, I've learned a lot, and I've had an opportunity to meet with the deputy administrators and many, but not all, of the department heads, and I've gotten a lot of great feedback from them, and I have a better handle on what the CAO needs to do to get you to get our team to the point where we're giving you the kind of service you want. In short, I'm withdrawing my request that I submitted to Madam CFO on June 14th. And as an aside, I do want to thank Ms. McLean and her team for their support and their patience that they've provided to me through this first budget process. So my alternate request for you today is for 2 assistant county attorneys, one legal assistant. I know I was encouraged to put in the full ask, and I think I certainly did that on June 14th, but since then, I've brought myself back down to earth, and my request and recommendation for you today is for those 3 additional staff members. I think with those personnel, we can meet the board's expectations. If I'm wrong, I can always come back and ask for more, but I'd rather aim low, I'd rather be more conservative than overshoot and grow the office beyond what we truly need. So that's what my ask is today, and I have provided each of you, as well as the clerk, Ms. McLean and her team, a copy of essentially a strike-through document of what was put together reflecting the correct numbers, and Ms. McLean and her team were kind enough to verify those under very short notice when I advised them of this yesterday. So that is my ask today.
If I can clarify something, Mr. Chairman, you see a dollar amount that's noted as remaining funds fiscal year '24. So I had mentioned back in for the adopted '24, the board approved for them to have a $300,000 budget for salary adjustments. And I was asked to bring back to see how much of those dollars they had left from those salary adjustments. So the total is $150,000, what was left behind. She did adjust 20 of her employees by a marginal percent, but they left back with benefits and everything calculated. What they left behind remaining was $150,000. So we ask as an offset of what she's asking to be reduced.
Well, just to be clear, those adjustments were by my predecessor.
Yes, ma'am.
I got a question. Madam County Attorney, how many attorneys are you still down right now? I know you hired 2 additional attorneys, and how many
Today, we are down 4.
4.
We have 2 starting on Monday.
Okay, so you'll still be down 4.
We'll still be down 2.
Down
If
2,
you
okay.
give me an additional 2.
And you give additional
then
2.
As of October 1st, I'll have the ability to hire 2 more.
Okay, all right. Any questions for County Attorney? All right, so what I'm going to need, you want to do it right now? Just do the motion now to bring it forward?
If you wish,
Okay, if
yes.
that's what you wish. All right, so what I need now is a motion to bring the revised county attorney's budget pulled forward. So, Hugh, I don't know how you want to write that up, but Madam Attorney, you want to give your own motion?
I move to approve the recommended budget for the county attorney's office as presented by the county attorney.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, so the motion was moved by Commissioner Ballard and seconded by Commissioner Van Ostenbridge. I'd like to open it up for any public comment. Seeing none, we're not going to have any casting votes, but I'll call for a vote by voice. All those in favor of the motion, say aye. 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 The motion carries 4-0 with Commissioner Turner and Commissioner Bearden being absent. All right.
Thank you,
Congratulations,
Commissioners.
Madam Attorney.
Thank you for your support.
Thank you, Commissioner. So we move forward, then now that I presented the changes on the budget, now how does that then feed into our now proposed budget for fiscal year '25? And I will talk a little bit about the capital improvement plan and where we stand as of today. The countywide sources, let's talk about the countywide as a whole for our revenues. It's very important that we understand what is the levels of our sources and what are the most important sources that drive our budget for fiscal year '25. As you can see, the beginning balance, which is, of course, the money that we have in our bank, our cash balances as projected to end and to start in 10/1. But the property taxes are the second largest of our funding sources for Manatee County at 19.4%. It's $472 million that it brings every single year, followed by our charges for services. Of course, this is inclusive of the utilities charges for services, which are a fairly large part of these charges for services, and the solid waste or any other of the others that collect rates, like it would be parks and so forth. So when we talk about the expenses, on the opposite side, you would think, how, besides our reserves, the largest, and of course, the reserves and our capital improvement plan, of course, the largest of our expenses is the sheriff of $235 million, followed by utilities and public works. It actually paints the picture to see, the kind of peeling the onion as to what all the departments that are entailed in our budget. Now, let's talk about the general fund and its sources. 50% of the total general fund's revenues are the property taxes at $338 million, which is very important to know. This is something that most other municipalities and counties are always asking. We, from the other counties, it's kind of like a good information to have in statistics. And for the general fund uses, this one depicts how we use the resources in the general fund. As we know, this is the most unrestricted fund that we have. The largest expense for the general fund is public safety and the sheriff, followed by property management. They are the largest funds within the general fund. Now, breaking it down a little bit further into our business operations. So we have 14 departments that are inside this budget, and then we have other programs. 12, all of these departments were impacted by changes in the proposed budget. So as you can see, I kind of like outlined each one on their changes that happened individually. And so as in the others, of the other programs, inclusive of the constitutional officers and the other programs that we carry, that totals the $42 million change that I outlined at the beginning. Now, let's talk about the capital improvement plan. Back in the June 18, there was some changes that we made to defer some projects and so forth. So the goal for deferring was to defer $254 million back then. All the departments, transportation, and they got together with the administration, and they were able to make a more sustainable and fair capital improvement plan. So now at $2.2 billion, which is what the fiscal year 25 through 29 is, but the total entire capital improvement plan is a $5.3 billion. The change in the capital improvement plan was $163 million. So you're going to ask yourself, if we defer $221 million, right? How come it only went down 163? Keep in mind, in fiscal year 24, we keep bringing budget amendments that are adding, adjusting, removing projects into the CIP. So all that had to be taken into consideration in this proposed capital improvement plan. So that's the ultimate impact of it. Did we were able to accomplish what we set forth on June 18th? Yes. So I can actually say that we have a more comprehensive and attainable capital improvement plan. when we look at the uses and sources for the capital improvement plan, and I will come back on the September 12th public hearing with the final debt service plan, debt funding plan for the CIP. It has reduced significantly, so I'm happy to say that we can now leverage our own funding sources without hurting the capacity, our debt capacity of our CIP. Now let's talk about the reserves. What were the impacts into this proposed plan on the CIP, on the reserves? When we made the changes for the July, for the pulled items, for the budgets brought forward, the changes to the departments and the changes to the reserves. The total was from the recommended to proposed. We have now $782.7 million in reserves. The change was into the reserves was $58.6 million, attributed to all these changes that we have outlined today. Yes, you can see that we still keep all of our 4 different types of reserves, and all of them received a corresponding adjustment to it. This is a very live CIP budget process. It kind of like impacts each one of those reserves. To talk about the difference between what happened in recommended and proposed right now, the change reflective into the total is $56.3 million. Of that, 44 is all in the general fund. As we know, $37 million of that change was into first the sheriff, and the other one was associated with changes into the other constitutionals and so forth, pulled items and so. So I always have to show this one because the reserve for cash balances is the strongest, but it's the one that is, at the end of the day, the one that is left with the largest volume. Our stabilization, in total, it's $189 million. Of course, of that, most of that is for sources that are restrictive, and so that leaves the general fund with a stabilization of 6.1 and $107 million of reserves into the general fund. Have we met our 20% best practice? At less than 20% overall countywide, we have met it at 9.7%. Now, we're going to talk about the most important thing that we're here today is about millage. To summarize on what has happened on the July 1st certification, the assessed values came in the countywide operating millage at 13.45% increase from last year. Our millage, current millage, is the 6.2326 mills. We can continue to have our Save Our Homes at 3% because our inflation continues to stay lingering at the range of 5%. To give you a little bit of the comparison over the years, you can see what are the changes that have happened over the years on our millage. In the last 2 years, we've had no change. Since 24, we've had no changes in the millage. The 2 previous fiscal years, we did. Now, I would like to talk a little bit about the trim millage, the trim notice. Where we are in this process that is so important for all counties, not only Manatee. We have already gone through the July 1st certification, so we are right now at where, after this meeting, we have to provide the certification to the Department of Revenue of our assessed of our millage in our budget. So at this point, the tentative millage. So in September, we have 2 public hearings, the September 12th. The trim notices will be sent out right after today. The deadline is August the 4th for the property appraiser to submit the the trim notices, which serves as our publication of the first public hearing, which will take place on September 12th. 5 days after that, we will have the September 17th second public hearing and final adoption of our budget. It's 5 days after because by requirement of law, I have to advertise it on the newspaper 2 to 5 days prior to that hearing taking place. So what are the next steps for September 12th? On our public hearing, on September 12th, we will have our next public hearing in which there's a couple of items that we're going to bring. One is the port budget, which they do not present their proposed budget to their board until end of August. Secondly, I will provide even more capital improvement changes that will bring us to the end, closer to the end of the fiscal year 24 changes approved by the board, so those have to be brought forward. Then I'll bring the special districts, the housing authority, and the law library, which those are blended component units that have to be included in our budget in order for them to approve their own budget. And then finally, the Department of Revenue brings in new estimates on the revenue, state revenue sharing, sales tax, gas tax, and so forth. So those as well, I will bring adjustments to the budget into it. And then also, there's one little minor thing, but very important. I bring adjustments, I bring forward all the balances of the projects and the grants so that they leave back into the budgets for continuation of those budgets as well. At this point, commissioners and county administrator, I ask that we place the motion to adopt the tentative millage at 6.2326, if the board wishes to do so. The unincorporated MSTU at 0.6109, and the Palmer MSTU at 0.2546.
Any questions, Madam CFO? Any questions? Okay. There is a motion on the board, moved by Commissioner Ballard. Got it? Okay. And,
I do
okay. Go ahead.
Sorry,
Go ahead.
I did have one question. Just to clarify, all we're doing is setting the maximum, correct? Because, I mean, historically, and I've talked to some people in finance, but we haven't gotten really to that point. Like, sometimes we've done like 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, 0.5, here's the rollback rate. We didn't really do that this time around. So I just want to clarify for everyone, because people are clamoring to lower their costs a little bit, that all we're doing is saying, okay, we're not increasing taxes. That's effectively the vote today. This isn't your taxes. And yes, everyone's going to get their trim notice, and it's going to have this number on it. And all your taxes are going to look higher because your values most likely went up 3% this year. Plus, you got the fire districts and school boards and everybody else slapping their own tax on there. But we're going to have an opportunity in September to make decisions based upon what final decisions we make relative to final budgets and impact fees and everything else. Is going to be a lot of components that are going to happen in the next 30 to 45 days. It'd be a little misguided to blindly set a ceiling lower when we have the opportunity to do it. I mean, we can slash these things in half, we're not. But we can hypothetically, in September, we can go as low as we want. We just can't go higher than this. So this is more of a clarification for the public, because they're all going to get the trim notice with this number on it. This isn't necessarily what the taxes are going to be. I think everyone is hopeful that we can find a way of lowering this like we've done 2 out of the past 3 years and giving some people some relief from their taxes to counter insurance and so forth. But until we have all the information, it would be mismanagement of finances to blindly lower it just for the sake of saying we lowered it at this point. Correct? So we are going to get the table of options once we have all the information with the constitutional officers and everything else, right?
I have that information I can provide to the, I was planning to provide it to the board if you wish to make those changes. And you are correct, you are correct. At this point, we are setting the maximum millage. You can go lower, but you cannot go higher with this motion.
Is that it, sir? All right, thank you. Before I call for the vote, is there any, I'd like to open up for public comment. Is anyone in the audience like to have any public comment on the millage, adoption of the millage? Seeing none, close public comment. The motion has been moved by Commissioner Ballard, seconded by myself. If everyone could cast their votes at this time. And the motion carries 4-0 with Commissioner Turner absent and Commissioner Bearden absent. Is that it, Madam CFO?
I appreciate it. With that said, we come to the final end of our work session. September 12 will be a little bit more heavier because I have to actually bring back, like Commissioner Cruz said, I have to bring back the revenues, the results of how much more dollars the revenues have brought in and so forth. This will be more involved.
Okay.
But at this point, I am adjourned.
All right, well, thank you very much, Madam CFO. Thank you for your team. Crunching all these numbers is a little crazy, so we appreciate all the hard work that you and your staff does and your team does, so thank you very much.
Thank you for your direction. Thank you.
Before we move to adjourn, Public Safety Director Jody Fisk, there's apparently a storm or something that's brewing that you need to give us an update on? Tropical wave? Something out there is messing around.
Good morning, Jody Fisk, Director of Public Safety. Yes, they actually just named it an Invest 97L. The track and intensity is still very, very uncertain, but given the size of the storm right now, we're looking to possibly see some impacts very early next week. We are circling up the first state calls this morning at 11:15, and then we will follow up with a briefing from the Weather Service, and then the Emergency Operations Center will be having a briefing at 3 p.m. to circle up with all of our county partners to discuss any possible protective actions.
Where's this tropical wave at right now?
I can set, so right now it's just coming up south of Cuba.
Okay.
So it's, again, they're so uncertain with the track and intensity right now that we're all just watching and monitoring very closely. So we'll be circling up, starting this afternoon with the EM team
Okay.
to provide the briefings. We will push out a briefing packet to everyone this afternoon following our 3 p.m. brief.
What time will it start raining at my house?
Well,
Can I walk my dog at 3 p.m. on Sunday?
I'm going to say yes. You'd be safe with umbrellas.
Our signs. I can't afford new signs. Specifically the one located at.
I feel the trap. No, so we'll be pushing out briefings. Like I said, the first state call is at 11:15 today. So in the event that we do see any kind of state of emergency from the governor's office, I will of course call Charlie and Courtney right away. I'm sorry, Administrator Bishop and Deputy Administrator DePaul. We'll be keeping everybody in the loop, but don't surprise if you hear from me over the weekend.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
And
Thanks
Jody,
for the update.
you're requesting the chair be on the 3 o'clock call?
Yeah, I'll be on the call.
Yes, we sent the invite over. That's just for county partners. That does not include any of our stakeholders with the state agencies yet.
Okay. All right, thank you. I'll be on that call. All right. Commissioners, is there anything else for the good of the order? All right, then we stand adjourned. Thank you very much. Oh, Madam CFO, she popped back up. You good?
I just wanted to ask if you had any questions for
No,
me.
we're done. We're good with you. All right, we stand adjourned. Thank you very much for everyone being here today.